The German Shepherd's ears snapped forward at exactly 2:47 p.m. on Christmas Eve, and in that single moment, everything changed. Rex had detected something that dozens of security cameras, hundreds of shoppers, and an entire team of mall security had missed. Someone was stealing, right under everyone's noses, and they'd been doing it for weeks. But what Rex couldn't know, what nobody could know until the very end, was that catching this thief would reveal a truth that would break hearts before it could heal them. Officer Marcus Webb felt the tension radiate through the leash before he understood why. Rex had stopped mid-stride in the crowded corridor of Riverside Mall, his body rigid, his dark eyes locked on something Marcus couldn't see. Around them, Christmas shoppers rushed past with bags and laughter, completely oblivious to the drama about to unfold. "What is it, boy?" Marcus whispered, following the dog's gaze. There, through the crowd, a flash of red velvet, Santa Claus weaving between shoppers with practiced ease, moving from the center court toward the West Wing. Nothing unusual about that. The mall Santa took breaks, walked around, spread holiday cheer. Except this Santa was carrying something tucked under his arm, something wrapped in that distinctive red velvet that didn't quite match his costume. Rex's nose twitched. Once, twice. Then he did something Marcus had never seen in 5 years of partnership. The dog looked directly at him and gave a low, urgent bark. Not his alert signal, not his warning bark. Something else entirely. Something that said, "This matters. Pay attention." Marcus trusted that bark more than he trusted his own eyes. He radioed dispatch quietly, keeping his voice calm even as his heartbeat accelerated. "This is Unit K-9, possible situation developing at Riverside Mall, requesting backup to West Wing entrance." The Santa had reached the jewelry store now, one of the upscale shops that lined the western corridor. He paused, glanced around with casual innocence, and then slipped behind the counter with a smile and a wave at the young saleswoman. She smiled back, clearly familiar with him, clearly seeing nothing wrong. But Rex saw. Rex knew, and the low growl building in his chest told Marcus that whatever was about to happen, they needed to act fast. The mystery that would unfold over the next 43 minutes would reveal more than just a theft. It would expose a secret operation that had been running under everyone's noses for 6 weeks. It would show how desperate people could become when the system failed them. And it would force Marcus and Rex to make a choice between the law and something more complicated than either of them had anticipated. But right now, in this moment, all Marcus knew was that his partner had detected something wrong, and Rex was never, ever wrong. The Santa emerged from the jewelry store 30 seconds later, no longer carrying the red velvet bundle. He walked with that same casual ease, waving to children, adjusting his beard, playing his role perfectly. To anyone watching, he was just another mall Santa taking a stroll during his break. Marcus made a decision. Rex, track. The German Shepherd moved forward with purpose, nose to the ground, following a scent trail that only he could detect. They wove through the crowd, Rex leading with absolute confidence, Marcus following with his hand near his radio, ready to call for more backup if needed. They passed the jewelry store. Rex didn't stop. He kept moving, kept tracking, his nose working overtime to filter through the overwhelming symphony of mall scents, perfume, fast food, leather goods, cleaning products, and underneath it all, something else, something that had Rex full attention. The trail led them to the food court, where the lunch rush was just ending and afternoon shoppers were taking breaks with coffee and pretzels. Rex's path took them past the pretzel stand, past the pizza counter, straight to the small bank kiosk in the corner, the kind of place people went to use the ATM, or occasionally to make deposits for the mall's retailers. A secure system, supposedly, protected by cameras and alarms and the mall's entire security infrastructure. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. If Rex was alerting on that deposit slot, it meant someone had accessed it, someone who shouldn't have. He pulled out his phone and called the mall's head of security, Sarah Chen. She answered on the first ring. "Sarah, I need you to check something. The bank deposit slot in the food court. When was it last accessed?" "Hold on." He heard the clatter of keys, the hum of computers. According to the logs, it was accessed this morning at 6 a.m. by the bank's armored car service. Why? can you pull up the security footage for that area from today and maybe the past week? Marcus, what's going on? Just trust me, please. 5 minutes later, Marcus was in the security office watching footage that made his stomach sink. Sarah stood beside him, her face growing paler with each passing second. Rex sat at Marcus's feet, calm now that the humans were finally understanding what he'd been trying to tell them. The footage showed the Santa, our mall Santa, approaching the deposit slot multiple times over the past 6 weeks, always during busy periods when nobody was paying attention, always with that casual, innocent demeanor, and always with a tool concealed in his red velvet costume. But here's what made Marcus's jaw drop. The Santa wasn't forcing the slot open. He wasn't breaking in. He was using what looked like a legitimate key, sliding it into the lock, opening the slot, and removing deposit envelopes with practiced efficiency. He'd take a handful, tuck them under his arm in that red velvet cloth, and walk away as if he'd just been taking a break. "How long has this been happening?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Marcus rewounded the footage, checking timestamps. 6 weeks, ever since your new Santa started. "We did a background check," Sarah protested. "He was clean. References, experience, everything checked out." "What's his name?" "Thomas Mercer, 58 years old, been doing mall Santa work for 10 years. Never a single complaint. He even donated part of his salary to the mall's charity fund. Why would someone like that steal from deposit boxes?" That was the question that would haunt Marcus for the next hour. Why? What drove a man with a clean record, a man who worked with children and donated to charity, to systematically steal from the mall's retailers? Rex whined softly, drawing Marcus's attention. The dog was staring at the security monitor showing the food court in real time. And there, walking past the camera, was Thomas Mercer, in his Santa suit, heading back toward the deposit slot. He had that red velvet cloth in his hand again, ready to conceal whatever he took. His back was to them, his attention focused on the task ahead. Rex tensed, ready to move, but Marcus held him back. "Wait," he whispered. "Let's see what he does."
They watched from behind a pillar as Thomas glanced around casually, saw nothing suspicious, and then pulled out his key. The slot opened with a soft click. He reached inside, pulled out 3 envelopes, and was about to close the slot when Rex made his move. The German Shepherd was across the food court in seconds, moving with the explosive speed of a trained police dog. Thomas had just enough time to turn to see the dog coming before Rex was there, barking with authority, positioning himself between Thomas and the exit. Thomas's face went through a series of emotions in rapid succession: surprise, fear, recognition, and then, strangely, relief. "I wondered when someone would notice," he said quietly, setting the envelopes down carefully. "I'm surprised it took this long." Marcus approached slowly, his hand on his weapon, but not drawing it. Thomas Mercer didn't look like a threat. He looked tired, sad, and somehow resigned to whatever was about to happen. "Mr. Mercer, I'm Officer Webb. I need you to step away from the deposit slot and put your hands where I can see them." Thomas complied immediately, raising his hands slowly. "The key is in my right pocket," he said. "I'm not armed. I'm not dangerous. I'm just trying to help." "Help?" Marcus repeated, confused. "You've been stealing from mall retailers for 6 weeks." "No," Thomas said with surprising firmness. "I've been borrowing. There's a difference." By now, Sarah had arrived with 2 security officers. Other shoppers were starting to notice the commotion, pulling out phones, whispering to each other. This was about to become a scene, exactly what Marcus had wanted to avoid. "Sarah, can we use your office? I want to hear his side before we make this official." The mall security office was small but private, and within 5 minutes they had Thomas Mercer seated in a chair, his Santa suit looking suddenly shabby under the fluorescent lights. Rex sat at attention nearby, watching the man with those intelligent eyes, processing information in ways Marcus could only imagine. "Talk," Marcus said, "and it better be good, because right now I'm looking at multiple counts of theft, breaking and entering, and fraud." Thomas took a deep breath, and when he spoke, his voice carried a weight that made Marcus lean forward. "My daughter is sick, leukemia. She's 23 years old, and she's dying because we can't afford the experimental treatment that might save her. Insurance won't cover it. We've exhausted our savings, we've sold everything, and we're still $300,000 short." The room went silent. Sarah's hand went to her mouth. Even Rex seemed to soften slightly, his ears relaxing just a fraction. "So you started stealing from the mall retailers," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice neutral. "Borrowing," Thomas insisted again. "I keep records of every envelope I take, every dollar I borrow. I was going to pay it all back. I have a plan. My house goes on the market next month, and the sales should cover most of it. The rest I'll work off over time. I left IOUs in the deposit slot every time, explaining everything." "IOUs aren't legal tender," Sarah pointed out gently. "The stores still lost money they were counting on." I know it was wrong, but my daughter is dying, and the hospital won't start treatment without payment up front. What would you do if it was your child? What would any of you do?" It was the question that had no good answer. The question that made the clear lines between right and wrong blur into something gray and complicated. Marcus looked at Rex, and the dog looked back at him. In that moment, Marcus could have sworn Rex was disappointed. Not in Thomas Mercer, but in the situation itself. In a world where a father had to steal to save his daughter's life. "How much have you taken?" Marcus asked quietly. Thomas pulled out a worn notebook from inside his Santa suit. $47,312. Every penny documented, with dates and store names. I was hoping to get to $50,000 by the end of today, and then I was going to disappear, find work somewhere else, start paying it back. He opened the notebook, showing pages filled with neat handwriting, store names, amounts, dates, all meticulously recorded. At the bottom of each page, he'd written, "I promise to repay, Thomas Mercer," followed by his phone number and address. Sarah took the notebook, flipping through it with wide eyes. This is insane. You really were planning to pay it back." "I still am. I know I broke the law. I know I deserve to be arrested. But please, can it wait until after Christmas? I need 3 more days to finish the arrangements for my daughter's treatment. 3 days, and then you can arrest me, prosecute me, do whatever you need to do. Just give me 3 more days to save my daughter." Marcus felt like he was standing at a crossroads with no good options. If he arrested Thomas now, he'd be following the law, doing his job, protecting the mall retailers. But he'd also be potentially signing a death warrant for a young woman who'd done nothing wrong except have the misfortune of getting sick. If he let Thomas go, he'd be violating his oath as a police officer. He'd be telling criminals everywhere that theft was acceptable if you had a good enough reason. He'd be compromising everything he believed in about law and order. Rex whined softly and stood up. He walked over to Thomas and did something extraordinary. The dog gently placed his head on the man's knee, a gesture of comfort and understanding that transcended the barrier between human and animal. Thomas looked down at Rex with tears streaming down his face. You knew what I was doing, and you knew why. Smart dog. Good, smart dog." Marcus made a decision that would haunt him for years, for better or worse. "Sarah, I need you to make some calls. I want to talk to the retailers who lost money, all of them. I want them here, in this office, in the next hour." "Marcus, what are you thinking?" Sarah asked carefully. "I'm thinking that maybe there's a third option. Maybe we don't have to choose between the law and saving a life. Maybe there's another way." What happened over the next hour was something Marcus would remember for the rest of his career. Sarah called every retailer who'd lost money to Thomas's borrowing scheme, and one by one, they arrived at the security office. Store managers, shop owners, franchisees, all expecting to hear about catching a thief, all ready to demand justice and restitution. Instead, they heard Thomas's story. Marcus let Thomas explain everything himself. The diagnosis, the treatment options, the insurance denials, the mounting bills, the desperate decision to borrow money he didn't have to save his daughter he couldn't lose, and the meticulous records he'd kept, the genuine intention to repay every penny, the IOUs he'd left in the deposit slot that nobody had noticed because nobody checked the deposit slots between the armored car pickups. The room was silent when Thomas finished. Some of the retailers had tears in their eyes. Others looked angry, conflicted, unsure how to process this information. Finally, a woman spoke up. She owned a small boutique on the second floor, one of the locally owned shops that struggled to compete with the big chain stores. "My store lost $800 to you," she said to Thomas. Her voice was hard to read, angry or sad or something in between. "Store number 47 in my notebook, December 18th. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The woman continued, "But my daughter had appendicitis last year. Emergency surgery. If I hadn't had insurance and if the hospital had refused to treat her until I could pay." She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. She looked at Marcus. "I'm not pressing charges. He can pay me back when he's able or not at all. I can't be part of letting someone's daughter die." One by one, the other retailers made similar statements. Not all of them. Some of them were too angry, too hurt by the theft to see past it. But enough, more than enough. They agreed not to press charges if Thomas would agree to a repayment plan, something reasonable that wouldn't bankrupt him further, but would eventually make them whole.
By the time they were finished, Thomas was sobbing openly, overwhelmed by the unexpected mercy of strangers. But Marcus wasn't finished. "There's still the matter of the key," he said. "How did you get access to the deposit slot?" Thomas wiped his eyes. "I didn't steal it. I found it. 6 weeks ago, I was doing my Santa shift when I saw a bank employee drop something near the ATM. By the time I picked it up, he was gone. I tried to return it to the bank, but when I explained what I'd found, they told me it wasn't their key, that their lock had been replaced 6 months ago, and the old keys were supposed to be destroyed." He pulled the key from his pocket and set it on the table. "I ran it through old security footage and realized it still worked on the deposit slot. They'd changed the outer locks, but not the deposit mechanism. It was like finding a door that wasn't supposed to exist. And I was desperate, so I used it." Sarah picked up the key, examining it. "This is a security disaster. We'll need to replace the entire system. But Marcus, technically, if the bank told him it wasn't their key, it's still theft," Marcus said firmly. But even he could hear the doubt in his own voice. Rex stood up and walked to the door, scratching at it gently. Marcus understood. The dog had done his job, had detected the theft, had alerted his partner. But now Rex wanted to move on, wanted to leave this complicated human situation behind and get back to the clear-cut world of police work. "Okay, boy," Marcus said, "we're almost done." He turned back to Thomas. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to return that key to Sarah right now. You're going to sign an agreement with every retailer in this room laying out your repayment plan. You're going to provide documentation about your daughter's treatment to prove this money is going where you say it's going. And you're never, ever going to do anything like this again. Understood?" Thomas nodded vigorously. "Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much." "Don't thank me yet," Marcus warned. "Because if you violate any part of this agreement, if you steal one more penny from anyone, I will personally hunt you down and make sure you face the maximum penalty for every crime you've committed. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear, officer. You have my word." But there was still one more piece to this puzzle. Marcus had Sarah pull up the security footage again, this time focusing on Thomas's interactions with the retailer's deposits. What he saw made him call for backup after all, not to arrest Thomas, but to investigate something else entirely.
In the footage, there was a pattern that Marcus had missed before. Thomas wasn't just taking envelopes randomly. He was selective, choosing specific stores, specific amounts. And more importantly, he was replacing some of the envelopes with others, different ones he seemed to bring with him. "What are you putting back in the deposit slot?" Marcus asked. Thomas hesitated, then sighed. Some of the stores, they were being skimmed. Their managers or employees were shorting the deposits, pocketing cash, and reporting false numbers. I could tell because the deposit amounts didn't match the store's reported sales. So when I borrowed money, I left notes warning them to check their internal security. Some of them I even left more money than I took to cover what their own people were stealing. Sarah pulled up the records, cross-referencing Thomas's notebook with store reports. Her eyes widened. He's right, look at this. The jewelry store, their deposits were consistently short until about 4 weeks ago. That's when their manager suddenly quit. And the electronics store, same thing. Their deposits started matching their sales after Thomas left one of his notes. Marcus's head was spinning. Thomas Mercer wasn't just a thief. He was also some kind of vigilante accountant, using his access to the deposit slot to expose other thieves while committing theft himself. "You should have gone to the police," Marcus said. "I know," Thomas admitted, "but I was already breaking the law. I didn't think anyone would believe me, so I just left warnings and hoped the stores would figure it out themselves." Rex barked suddenly, sharp and urgent. He was at the door again, but this time his body language was different. This wasn't a request to leave. This was an alert. Marcus opened the door and Rex bolted out, running down the corridor with Marcus sprinting behind him. They emerged into the mall proper just in time to see the jewelry store manager, the one whose store Thomas had borrowed from multiple times, rushing toward the west exit with a duffel bag. The man saw Marcus and Rex and made a run for it, but Rex was faster. The German Shepherd cut off his escape route, herding him back toward the mall's interior. Marcus tackled him, and when the duffel bag spilled open, it revealed tens of thousands of dollars in cash and jewelry, far more than Thomas had ever taken. As security arrived to take the jewelry store manager into custody, Marcus understood what had happened. Thomas's notes had panicked the man, made him realize his skimming operation had been discovered. So he decided to grab everything he could and run. Today, on Christmas Eve, when the mall was chaotic enough to cover his escape. If Thomas hadn't been using the deposit slot, if Rex hadn't detected the pattern, this man would have gotten away with a fortune. 2 hours later, Marcus sat in his truck with Rex in the passenger seat, trying to process everything that had happened. His radio crackled with updates. The jewelry store manager had confessed to embezzling over $200,000 over 3 years. Several other retailers were now investigating their own employees based on Thomas's notes. And Thomas Mercer, he was back in his Santa suit, finishing his shift, spreading Christmas cheer to children while wearing the weight of everything that had happened. But he'd also received some unexpected news. Several of the retailers, grateful that Thomas had inadvertently exposed theft in their stores, had offered to contribute to his daughter's treatment fund. Combined with the money Thomas had already collected, it might be enough. "You did good today, boy," Marcus said, scratching Rex behind his ears. The dog seemed satisfied, but tired, ready to go home and rest after a day that had challenged every instinct and training he possessed. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Talk to the DA. Given the circumstances and the retailer's willingness not to press charges, they're letting Thomas off with community service and restitution. Merry Christmas, Marcus. You did the right thing."
Had he? Marcus wasn't sure. He'd bent rules, shown mercy where the law called for punishment, allowed a thief to walk free based on circumstances rather than actions. Some cops would say he'd failed his duty. Others would say he'd understood the spirit of justice better than its letter. But as he drove home through the snow-dusted streets, passing houses decorated with Christmas lights and families gathering for the holiday, Marcus realized something important. Rex had been trying to tell him something all along, something deeper than just, "this person is stealing." The dog had understood, in whatever way dogs understand such things,
that Thomas Mercer wasn't a criminal in the traditional sense. He was a desperate father, doing the only thing he could think of to save his daughter. And while that didn't excuse the theft, it did explain it, contextualize it, make it something that required mercy rather than just punishment. 3 months later, Marcus received a letter in the mail. It was from Thomas Mercer's daughter, Emma. She wrote about her treatment, which was going well. She wrote about her father, who was working 3 jobs to pay back the retailers while still managing to be there for her appointments. And she wrote about Rex, the smart dog who'd caught her father, but also, in a strange way, had saved her life. "If your dog hadn't noticed what my dad was doing," she wrote, "he would have kept stealing until someone else caught him, and then he'd be in prison, and I'd be alone. But because Rex alerted you when he did, and because you chose to understand rather than just enforce, my dad and I got a second chance. We're going to make it right, all of it. Thank you for seeing past the crime to the person underneath." Marcus showed the letter to Rex, who sniffed it curiously and wagged his tail. The dog probably didn't understand the written words, but he seemed to understand the emotion behind them. That evening, Marcus and Rex did their usual patrol at Riverside Mall. The Christmas decorations were down now, replaced by signs for Valentine's Day. A new Santa program was being planned for next December, with better security measures and more stringent background checks. But the jewelry store manager was in prison. Several other employees who'd been caught stealing had been fired. And the mall's retailers had formed a support group to help each other through difficult times, inspired by the community response to Thomas Mercer's situation. As they walked past the spot where Thomas had worked as Santa, Rex paused and looked at Marcus with those knowing eyes. And Marcus could have sworn the dog was telling him something important. That sometimes catching the bad guy wasn't the end of the story. Sometimes it was just the beginning of understanding why people did bad things, and what it meant to show mercy in a world that often demanded only justice. That the law was important, but so was compassion. That rules had to be enforced, but context mattered. That a good cop and a good dog knew when to arrest and when to listen, and when to look for that third option that nobody else could see. Rex had taught him that. A German shepherd with extraordinary instincts and an even more extraordinary heart. And as they left the mall that evening, Marcus felt grateful for the privilege of working with a partner who understood not just how to detect crime, but how to detect humanity in all its complicated, messy, beautiful forms. The mystery of the Santa thief had been solved. But the greater mystery, how to be good in a world that made it so hard to be good, that was something Marcus and Rex would keep working on together, one patrol at a time, one decision at a time, one act of mercy at a time. And somewhere across town, a father sat beside his daughter's hospital bed, holding her hand, telling her stories about smart dogs and second chances, and the kind of Christmas miracles that came not from magic, but from people choosing to be better than they had to be. The snow continued to fall outside, soft and silent, covering the world in white. And in that white, anything seemed possible. Even redemption.